There's this shithead, right? And he probably lived in a cave at the time. One day, shithead here starts... Oh. I bet you I can get some pussy with this. So he went out to his tribe in search of pussy and said, look guys, it makes a noise. The tribe thought it was the dopest shit they had ever seen, and for a few weeks after that, every sunset, the tribe would sit around a fire and knock their hands together in unison like they're on a fucking short bus. Now, they have been doing this for a good few days, but let's take a look at this guy. This is Shithead's buddy, Dildo. Now, Dildo's a little bit of a weenie, you know, a little bit of what you'd call a beta male in modern society, and he realized, that hurts. That fucking hurts my hands. I don't like it. I think it was a dumb idea. So the Einstein that he went into his cave, picked up 2 rocks, started knocking them together. Oh, I can do this for hours. My hands don't even hurt, he said. I bet you I can get some pussy with this. So he went and showed it to his tribe in search of pussy, and the tribe loved it. And for centuries, they sat around a fire and knocked rocks together because that's all they had to do. They could have been doing it to please a deity. They could have been doing it so it brings more rain. No one knows. Okay, they could have just been doing it to have fun. Why can't you let them have fun? Just let them have fun. There wasn't a lot of innovation in music for a little while after that. But then one day, Nuttin' the Neanderthal, or as his boys called him, Bust a Nut, he realized that if I blow into things, it makes a noise. He was fascinated, and one day the tribe hunters came back with a cave bear that they had bravely slain. And before sucking these guys off, Bust a Nut ran over and grabbed some of the bigger bones from the cave bear, specifically the femur. He went back in his hut, or teepee. I don't know his living situation. He could have lived in a suburban home, who knows? He went back in his suburban home and started twiddling at this femur. Bust a Nut had figured out how to manipulate sound, and he was the first person is a Neanderthal person. He was the first person to create an instrument. Once again, for a lot of years, there wasn't really any innovation in music. Oh, looks like Mesopotamia just created a fucking stringed instrument. Oh, fuck. The Greeks have it too, but it's fucking handheld and everyone carries it around like a goddamn iPad. Oh, look at what else Greece did. They just invented music theory. I mean, that's kind of true. The Greeks really just like to dissect everything under the sun, including the music they played on their little harp iPads. Oh, Sri Lanka and India, look at what you're doing. You play that shit with a bow? How the fuck do you figure that out? Central Asia? No. 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 Oh, wait, that one looks like the Sri Lanka one. Except it's arguably the most beautiful sounding instrument that's ever been created by man. The world had its instruments, and that's pretty cool. I'm so fucking done with this video right now. I want to kill myself. I'm gonna drink myself to death tonight. I'm trying to do new things on the channel, okay? But I know I'm getting everything wrong. I know I'm gonna get everything wrong with this video, right? And there's gonna be some fucking music professor in the goddamn comments. I'm like, oh, you fucking idiot. Ooh. That sounded Asian and a little racist. I didn't mean for it to sound like that. I'm doing this for fun. Okay, this is fun. This is really fun. Oh, fuck. To sum everything up, some people were playing music just for fun. Most of them were doing it for religious purposes, which is boring. David played the chord that pleased the Lord, and then he got horny or something. The Vikings were inventing metal vocals. The Mongolians were inventing acid jazz. And then medieval times, there was this thing called Gregorian chants. I think that's how you say it. Gregorian? Gregorian. There was no rhythm behind them. There was pitch and some minor harmony because they were kind of figuring out how to use modes at this time. A lot of cultures banned music because they thought it was gay, which it is, and that's fine. That's okay. Speaking of gay, the Renaissance. The Renaissance was kind of underwhelming for music, honestly. I mean, at least compared to like what else happened during the Renaissance, yeah, not a lot happened to music. in that regard. You had these new forms of a cappella groups, right? And that kind of set out the basis of how we sing today, even. I mean, the church could really only afford these groups, which is typical. Outside of the church, you did have these little, like, 5-person groups of musicians that would kind of play on the streets or maybe in the brothel, whatever. Sounds like a band, Judy. It wasn't a band. It's called a consort. Okay, a consort. Oh, and there's this new instrument. But it's secretly a stringed instrument. I want to kill myself. I want to fucking kill myself. I dropped out of high school. I'm not qualified for this. I don't know. There was a bunch of rich monarchs and they were like, I want to make music loud. I want to make some loud-ass music. Let's get this fucking opera composer right here and let's have him make some loud music. And then the opera composer was like, okay, I'm going to assign like almost 100 musicians to 4 separate parts, which is fucking unnecessary, right? Boom, the orchestra, holy shit. The orchestra was the new cool thing in music, unless you lived anywhere that wasn't Western Europe. Is there anything in this part that's like interesting? I kind of just want to get to the late 60s, because that's like the coolest part. Okay, I got an idea to spice this up a little bit. Here's some cool facts about classical composers. Mozart probably tasted shit in his life, like literal human shit. Mozart was a scatologist. I know most people have probably seen the Filthy Frank video on this, but it's just a fact. He liked poop. He was interested in poop. He wrote songs about poop. He wrote jokes about poop. He probably took a shit in the outhouse and was like, poop, and then ate it. Beethoven ate some lead and then fucking died. Wait, no. Beethoven got lead poisoning. Probably from something like paint. Oh, this is a fun one. This is a classic. Bach talked some shit to a bassoonist, and then later that day, the bassoonist beat the living shit out of him with a cane. Compton. These were your rock stars at the time. This set the basis for what a rock star is. Now, from this point on, I'm probably going to start leaving a lot of shit out. There's a lot of cultures dropping bangers. The population has grown. All these composers have gotten to the point where they're just competing to be better than their fellow composer. But anyway, yeah, I'm gonna leave a lot of shit out. I think I'm just gonna talk about the shit that I'm interested in personally. Fuck. What were my personal ancestors doing at this time? I'm talking, of course, about the Celtics, the Gaelics, the dudes from Scotland. Yeah, I've just been informed the Celts, the Celtic peoples, had been long extinct by this time in history. You will notice that the next scene in this video is a sketch referring to the people of Ireland. Just note that the characters are not Celtic people, they are just filthy fucking mix. Hey guys, Patrick McLeod, McElhannon, O'Neill, he says we're running out of potatoes. Should we do something about that? Yes, what do you have to say, Michael O. McDonald?
Timmy Connell, my best singer, shut it in. Timmy Connell, shut it in. My best, Timmy Connell.
Okay, let's go to America. Let's bring our music with us because we have nothing else. We're poor. And that music would go on to become bluegrass. The last good genre of music that was pioneered by white people. Anyway, what did the more wealthy Europeans bring into the New World? Not music, slavery. I don't like this part of the video. I'm gonna dance around this topic very carefully. You see, in the fields, fuck, they would want to keep themselves entertained because of the horrible conditions they were put into. Horrible. They had to keep themselves entertained, so they would sing hymns.
Moses, way down in Egypt land.
They had these hymns, and they were very diverse in what they would sing about. Some of them were brought over from Africa. Some of them were just written by them, and the conditions they were put into, the horrible conditions they were put in. Now, this might be a myth. There's no real proof of this, but it makes for a pretty cool story, so I'm going to pretend like it's real. The slave owners had kids. They'd be fucking too. They wanted their kids to be interested in something, so they bought them instruments. The kids obviously were not interested. They got everything they need. Fuck you, Dad. The slave owners would be like, I don't know what to do with this fucking guitar. I guess I'll give it to the slaves. The slaves would learn how to play these instruments on their own. There's no YouTube back then, and they're not gonna get classical teaching. So they came up with very unique ways to play these instruments and mixed it with their hymns. Blues, a genre of music that would pretty much dictate 95% of all Western music to this day. A genre of music fully dictated by the oppression of a people that is now solely used by white dads and Guitar Center. I stole that joke from a samurai guitarist video. Let's remember the time period we're in. This is the late 19th century or so. What else is going on in the late 19th century? The Second Industrial Revolution. There's this guy Thomas Edison who is like, I want to hear a sound and then hear it again. The phonographic cylinder was patented in 1878. It's like this wax cylinder that sound gets carved into, like the vibrations of sound get carved into the wax with a needle. I don't fucking know how to explain this thing. How the fuck do they figure that out? Like, how the fuck? It seems easier to figure out how to record shit into fucking Logic, doesn't it? What the fuck? Rob Scallon has a pretty cool video on it. That's where you're gonna learn how it works, because I don't fucking know. The point is, sound could be recorded and then played back. This is the biggest innovation in music pretty much ever. I don't have a good segue out of this part, but I'm just gonna go into it. Out of blues came jazz, soul, even gospel. Now, jazz was the most dancey out of all these genres, and what do goofy-ass white people in the early 1900s like to do? Dance. What do goofy-ass white people like to do when the government bans alcohol? They like to get drunk and dance. So what did these illegal alcohol parties, or speakeasies as you might know them, what kind of music did they have playing in them? Jazz. Oh shit, guys, we can record music and sell it now. Holy fuck, jazz spreads across the fucking nation within days. It's a really good time, everyone's having fun. Hey, Mary? Mary? Mary, what the fuck happened to all our money? Mary! Mary, what the fuck? What happened to all our money? As you've probably heard, you can't be sad and dance at the same time. So people, of course, still danced, and jazz became even more popular, becoming swing and all that shit. But there were still some blues musicians that were keeping it real. They decided to accept their reality and write lyrics about it. Lyrics that people could relate to. Fuck that shit, we're gonna make musicals because people are always happy in musicals. What the fuck? India likes that shit too, so much so that they still haven't gotten tired of it after 90 fucking years. Uh-oh, Russia just called, they said that shit's kinda gay. Hey yo, the pizza here! Oh! We're gonna become communist and make the most epic fucking music that anyone's ever heard. Oh, look at that. The world is at war. Looks like music's on hold for a second. Just give me a minute. Hold on. Just let me put that right there. Just give it a minute. It'll come back around. Give it like 5 years. Some musicians wanted a new sound. Let's get a bunch of these genres that we've been playing, like blues, jazz, swing, R&B, soul, gospel, bebop, boogie woogie, and mix it all together in a seasoned walk. Let's even grab some of that honky shit. I forgot I wrote that. Let's grab some of that honky shit and dab a little bit of that in there. Rock and roll was the cool new thing. I could make so many cheap shots about how white people took rock and roll. I don't even know how to write a good joke about it. Elvis. Now, while Sinatra was winning the hearts of American moms, Elvis was winning their daughters' cervixes. Elvis became the voice of rock and roll. He was rebellious, he was hardcore, He danced so sexually. Oh my God, Elvis. Oh my God, Elvis. Elvis was the voice of rock and roll, but there's obviously plenty of other rock and roll musicians. Bro, stop. Stop. Oh my God, it all sounds the fucking same. Oh, there's another war. And I know what you're thinking. Music's just gonna be on hold for a few years. We'll get back to it. I'd say you're a pretty silly Yankee, because no, this time it's just America.
A surprise audience that might come tomorrow.
These filthy fucking redcoats have just been in the shadows, watching, listening to every blues song, every rock and roll album these Yankees have jizzed out. The Beatles! They're a pretty cool band. I guess British music isn't that bad, said the Americans. Still all kind of sounds the same though. You guys want to take this acid? From an artistic and musical perspective, you could almost say the late 60s was the biggest shift, the fastest shift in culture that humanity has ever seen. Artists, musicians just had this overhaul of creative ideas. They were experimenting more. They were experimenting with their music. They were experimenting with what their instruments could do. They wanted to push it as far as they possibly could. Was this drugs? I don't know. Sure does seem like it. The music definitely fucking sounds like it. I'm not gonna make any assumptions though. And then into the 70s, this culture pretty much stayed around. It's just progressing constantly. And the Brits are still putting out bangers. There's this band that I don't remember the name of, but they put out an album called Led Zeppelin 2, and it's fucking dirty, okay? It's fucking dirty. For the time, it's very dirty. This guy that looks like a golden retriever is talking about cum dribbling down his leg and stuff. Cum dribbling down his leg, but in the form of a lemon. A lemon. He's making sex noises over a psychedelic break. There's this other band from the UK that likes the devil a lot. I don't remember what they're called either, but they put out an album called Black Sabbath. And it's the loudest, scariest, evil shit, most evil shit that anyone had heard at the time. And then there's this other British band that, like, everyone kind of thought up until this point, they're just a little bit too weird for my taste. I don't know, it's something about them. It sounds like nails on a chalkboard. Oh fuck, they just put out the greatest album of all fucking time. I'm sure that's gonna make for a really fun time in the comments section. But look guys, there's even more. These guys actually figured out we need to look better when we're on stage. It can't just be us guys playing instruments. No, we're putting on a show. How about we use some lights? How about we use some fire? How about... That's gonna cost a lot of fucking money. And then literally for the rest of time, every concert would be just like that. But this is all rock music. There's obviously some other music bumping in the club around this time period. People still like to dance just as much as they did during the Great Depression. And that's why disco was created and then died 2 days later. Now let's go back a few decades. For the past 2 decades or so, there had been a little race between a bunch of musicians to see who could make the heaviest fucking shit possible. And this race was still going on. Black Sabbath kind of topped everyone, and they got it to the point where there needed to basically be a new genre for it. Heavy metal. Heavy fucking metal. Heavy metal proceeded to have so many fucking subgenres that you'd think it's Nemo's MILF-ass mom with her fucking eggs, and there's no barracuda. I don't know where the fuck I was going with that joke. Heavy metal went on to become a very defining genre of the 1980s. But wait guys, it's been almost 30 years since the honkies took rock and roll. What have our African American buddies been up to this whole time? Well, as it turns out, they kind of fucked with the disco stuff. They kind of fucked with that funk. You know what I mean? Like Chic. You guys ever heard of Chic? It's a good band. So boiling up in the underground, there have been some guys, or DJs as you might know them, figuring out how to remix these tracks, they realized it sounds pretty cool if you rhyme over this. If you maybe do some poetry over it to the rhythm of the beat. Hip-hop. Hip-hop was born, and you gotta realize this music was pretty fucking obscure for the day. Almost all music up until this point has been dictated by a singer who sings a melody. These guys aren't necessarily following that construct, so it stayed very underground for the first few years that it was around. And then it got brought to Pound Town. And then in my pants I browned. You see that shit? Much like rock, it quickly became dirtier, heavier. And much like blues, it talked about real shit. Some real problems that people were going through. And in return, people were instantly drawn to that because they could relate to the lyrics. By the late 80s, hip-hop essentially became the blueprint for how to exercise your freedom of speech. And no one really saw it that way at the time. And then, on top of everything else, the mainstream. 80s pop music and new wave. Michael Jackson. He's pretty cool. New wave. I don't know shit about new wave. I'm not gonna try to sit here and act like I know shit about new wave. What even is new wave? No one really knows. It's not really a genre. It's this fucking fly in my goddamn fucking... I don't know a lot about 80s pop. I love the music. I would personally say the 80s was the best era for pop music. Personally, that's my personal opinion. My personal opinion. Oh, and then you got these guys who I would get a lot of shit if I didn't mention. Now, just like hip-hop, there was another genre that was talking about some real shit. That would be punk rock. Punk rock was created way before the 80s, I just forgot to mention them. Surprisingly, this genre became pretty mainstream in the early 90s, when it became an entirely different genre called grunge. Let's remember something real quick. For the last decade, most popular music was written about partying, pussy, pretty much only things that were relatable to the people singing it. This is one of the reasons why grunge just exploded. Because people get bored of that shit. Grunge was different. Grunge talked about the emotions of a man. Sad boy shit. Which, of course, as we've seen over the last 100 years, people gravitate towards that. Kurt Cobain, Lane Staley, Chris Cornell, they looked like they just jumped out of the audience on stage and started singing. They looked like their audience. People like that shit. Oh, but Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and motherfucking Pearl Jam aren't actual grunge bands, Judy. Oh my god. The 90s ended up becoming a very rock-dominated decade. You still had pop music, but it wasn't quite as iconic as it was in the 80s. Hip-hop, however, was fucking gaining some traction, man. It was fucking gaining. All of a sudden, this genre that was majorly underground, just like 10, 15 years ago, it has like legit rock stars now. Do I even need to talk about the next part, like the next 20 years? You're supposed to close a video on something interesting, but there's literally no way I can make this interesting. I'm not saying that music died in the 2000s, but there's nothing interesting about it. The 2000s, the turn of the millennia. First thing that happened, I was born. Then some towers exploded. Humanity had advanced so much by this point, they already had decades of experience with the synthesizer. So therefore, most music was just completely dictated by it. Another thing to note is how grunge died. It just turned into this like quote-unquote post-grunge thing with guys like Creed and Nickelback. It was essentially country music at one point, just in the way that it all was the same shit. It was just like, shut the fuck up. Oh my god. Even in pop, there's not that many memorable musicians on the level of something like the Beatles. Which I don't think is a problem. I think what it is there's too many artists. There's too many artists, there's too much music being put out to kind of hone in on one person, you know, and make them Michael Jackson. The 2010s, it's an advanced version of the 2000s. But rock is even more dead than it was. Another thing to note is that lyrics have gone pretty much fully back to being about partying, sex, relationships, shit like that. And in return, there's not as many emo kids walking around the streets as there were in the 2000s. Kind of sad. But one of the biggest things that happened in the 2010s, or they got popular in the 2010s, streaming. Which means musicians make a lot less money, but it has never been easier to start a music career in the history of mankind, even back to the days of dildo. Look at that shit. It's already the 20s. Yet again. We're in the second year right now. We don't know what the fuck's gonna happen in this decade, but I want to leave this on a positive note. As I mentioned a minute ago about it being so easy to start a music career, it's only gotten easier. You can put music out from your parents' basement. No fucking problem. Just like it's a YouTube video or something. That's fucking cool. You're not gonna make any money off of it, but if you do this for money, I've said this before, you don't need to be in this shit. So maybe you can define this decade. Make me some cool shit. I'm starting to lose hope. Have fun in this decade. Let's see where we are in 8 years. You're gonna go far, kid.